Okay.
Okay, we should be live.
Okay, we are. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Insurance and Pharmaceuticals Subcommittee of the House Health and Government Operations Committee. This is the opportunity for us to work on bills to get it to a place where we can hopefully get general consensus, resolve any issues it might have, or decide how the bills might go forward, or maybe need some more work. We have a very long agenda and a very short time today because, I ask everyone's indulgence and patience. We're now at the point of session when our floor sessions may run a little long, and therefore it affects all of the scheduling past that, which is what happened today. So it is most unlikely that we will be able to get to all of the bills on our agenda today. We will do as many as we can, and we will have to have an additional meeting at some point of this subcommittee in order to address the bills that we do not get to today. With that, I'm going to just tell the first four bills, and if we get beyond the first four, we're doing well. We are going to begin with House Bill 413. That's number one. Number two is House Bill 1148. Number three is House Bill 1219. And number four is House Bill 1111. And if we get beyond that, we'll be happy and can move on. So we're going to start with House Bill 413, Health Insurance, Individual Market Stabilization, Extension of Provider Fee. This is a bill that we discussed last week, and the question was to ask the Commissioner of Insurance to find out what the CMS rules around uniformity of application of the provider fee. And we have some information on that. Lisa, do you want to tell us quickly what the bill does for folks, and then tell us what the bill does, and then I'm going to go to the commissioner so she can explain what the uniformity implies and how we're going to address that. So, Lisa?
This administration bill extends the existing state health insurance provider fee assessment through calendar year 2028. There are amendments on page 2 of your packet. The amendments establish a credit for standalone dental and vision plans. They provide that funds from the distribution of the assessment may only be used for certain purposes, and they require the Maryland Insurance Administration, in consultation with the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange and the Maryland Healthcare Commission, to submit a report to the Governor and General Assembly on the impact of the state reinsurance program. The reporting language is a little bit different than what you saw last week. It's a little bit more narrow and focuses specifically on reinsurance in the individual market.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Commissioner Barain, for following up and helping us to determine what we need to be able to do to move forward. So, Commissioner, can you just inform the group what you learned?
Sure, briefly. We were unable to connect with CMS, but what we were able to do was look back historically and see how the decision had been made originally to include the standalone dental plan and standalone vision plans in order to meet not the uniformity requirement, but the broad-based tax requirement. Right. And so there was a strong indication. A Medicaid team also weighed in on this. It had been weighed in on by the Office of the Attorney General, by DLS, and the very strong consensus, and I've heard nothing legally to the contrary, was that in order to meet the broad-based requirement, these plans need to be included. There may be some options to give these plans some credit with respect to other assessments that would be helpful to them. We were also asked to take a look at what other states have done. I received a listing of states where the belief was that these states exempted both dental and vision and MCOs, Medicaid MCOs. And we were able to validate both through our review of the law and through discussions with any commissioners where there was any uncertainty that in fact does not exist. So for example, to use Delaware as an example, I spoke to Trinidad Navarro and his AG that same day, and they were very clear and pointed us to the reference where Delaware does not exempt, does not assess Medicaid MCOs. So the same thing with Oregon. So we went through the list of states that we were provided. We can circulate that, but and I know that I shared, for example, with you, Delegate Colson, the information that came from Delaware. So I think the two things that we were asked to do was to see if we could validate that there were states that were assessing Medicaid MCOs and exempting standalone dental and standalone vision. And each example that we were given, we were able to demonstrate that through our review of the law or through our conversations with that state insurance commissioner, that is not occurring. And then I've already mentioned to you about the analysis around the broad-based standard. So that's my report.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Michelle Everly, did you have anything you wanted to add around this, or are you comfortable with the bill the way it is now?
Yes, I have nothing additional.
Okay. I just want to clarify for the committee that the reason for the amendment that allows that's providing some relief for the standalone dental and vision is they are not actually able to take advantage of the reinsurance program. So while they're paying into it, they don't get the benefit of it, where all of the other carriers actually do tap into that reinsurance fund. So that's the rationale behind what we're trying to do here, which is continuing to include them, but providing them with a little relief in some tax credits on some other areas. Are there any questions from the committee or folks who want to make a comment? Delegate Krebs. You're on mute, Delegate.
About that. I'm still a little confused. I mean, when we started this program a number of years ago, first of all, I thought it was supposed to be temporary, and I've been uncomfortable with it ever since. So this bill today extends it, tell me if I'm wrong, for 5 years. Is that correct? The funding mechanism for 5, which is a long time. And I haven't really seen any, except people telling me just experientially what they think is happening. I haven't really seen any data saying how the patient's doing. How is this investment in funds done anything? What I've seen it do is shift funding from one group of people, who were taxing, to another group of people to keep their policy, their subsidies down, which sounds great. And I think it's great when everybody goes and says, hey, we got the lowest, rates around. That's because they're being subsidized, heavily subsidized by another group of people. And we could make it free for everybody if we subsidized them even more. But the question becomes, what was the purpose of the program to begin with? And I believe it was to get more people into the market, and it was to make sure that more people were getting healthier because they were now covered. And I haven't really seen any data to see how the patients are doing, that we reduced their premiums, we got more people into the market. How are those people doing? And then if this is so important of a funding, to continue the funding, first we got to figure out if it's really worked. And then secondly, why do we just make certain people have to pay a tax to fund it versus make it broad-based or come out of the general fund? So it's two-part question. But the first part is, how have we evaluated the success, not just by premium costs, but the success of people being more healthy because of the investments that we've made. I say we made, a certain group of insurees have made to bring people's premiums down. And I'm disappointed that we don't have more, study language, I guess, at the outcomes of patients to look at before we make a decision on this. And then the next question is, why do we have to do it this year before we have the outcomes? Why can't we wait until we see the success of the program? It's multiple questions in one, but it's an important issue.
It is an important issue, and it is the rationale for the bill is that there's evidence that certainly that premiums have been maintained or lowered because of the program. I'm gonna put some of the carriers on the spot, and Matt, were you raising your hand to respond, or do you have another comment?
Just overall comments.
Okay, then hold off. Debbie Rifkin, do you want to speak to how perhaps Care First is keeping track of patient outcomes with respect to broadening the pool of well people, more people coming in because of lower premium rates?
So that's a tricky question, and I think I will have to. I can't answer it fully today, to be totally honest. But we keep track. We know how many more people are coming into the individual market. I don't know those numbers, but clearly there have been. I think the exchange will know that we have increased the amount of individuals that have come into the marketplace and been able to retain a number of people to stay, which was always a problem. People were dropping out. We do know that rates overall have been dropped approximately 30% since the program started. But the tricky part about me trying to explain about outcomes in this market is because we don't look at things by market. We look at things by our entire membership, right? So the programs we have in place are the same programs in the individual market, small group market, large group market, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're looking at our entire book, and what happens often, individuals move. So you can be in the individual market and then you get a job that with an employer that offers coverage and you move into a different small group or large group marketplace. That doesn't mean that you're not still getting the same care in the same programs where we're trying to track your outcomes and help you, but it means you're not necessarily always in the individual market. And so it's a very difficult question, Delegate Krebs, to answer.
Okay. Vinny, were you going to speak to that specifically, or did you have another comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to add that in addition to the tremendous help that the program is given through
Vinny, your audio.
insurance and bringing premiums down, we got to recall. Is that better?
Deb is still not on mute. Deb, go on
Okay,
mute.
there you go. I think you now.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to say quickly that in addition to the tremendous benefits that the program has given individuals by reducing premiums, as Deb Rifkin and the chair pointed out, and others, the program does fund very critical youth subsidies, which this year have resulted in 11,000 new young people getting into the exchange, which is great for them and great for all of us, because the more young, healthy people are in the exchange, the less pressure there is on premiums going up, and has funded the critical health equity resource communities. And 9 entities were given pathways grants by the Community Health Resource Commission just last week were awarded that will reduce health disparities. So this program is doing a lot in this state that will help people make lives better for people in addition to the reinsurance. I just want to make that point in response to Delegate Krebs. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. And so I'm going to wrap up this conversation and say, we know that the program is essential in order to keep premium rates down. Keeping premium rates down allows more people to join into the market. Having more people join into the market makes sure that we keep people healthier. I can tell you that through this discussion, I'm working with some of the carriers and other advocates to talk about a bill next year that will actually look at patient outcomes as we implement these different programs that we have. So we'll try to be answering your question next year, but with respect to the reinsurance program, it's shown its value over the last 3 years that we've had it, and we want to make sure that we can maintain it. And I think I'm going to go to Michelle Eberly.
Madam Chair, they didn't answer the second part of my question. The second part of my question.
Tell me the second part again.
Again, if what you just said is all true, and again, I'd like to look at data. We've had 3 years to do this. The second part of my question is, if this is so valuable for all of those reasons stated, why can't we find a source that is not just taxing one group of insurance people that have a certain type of insurance? Why don't we make it broad-based or make it come out of the general fund? And why are we doing this year before we have the information when this thing, it's not due till next year? I mean, we have another year to consider these things. And this is a 5-year, we're voting on a 5-year extension of this program. And we don't even have the data from the last 3 years yet. So I understand everybody's feelings toward it, but it just seems like it's premature. And if we're going to do it, even do it for a year or two, and then pay for it out of the general fund so that everyone's paying for it and not just people with certain policies whose policy rates are going up. I mean, those people, we're not looking at what's the impact on the people in the small group market, the individual market that are being taxed on this, who are paying the subsidies to keep these other people's rates low. So that's my broader question in general.
And I think that's a question that's going to be looked at going forward. I also would say that the reason it came in this way is because the federal government under the ACA was charging this premium provider fee. And so the carriers were already paying it. When the federal government stopped it, we decided to take advantage of the fact that that amount was already built into the premium rates and continuing it forward. But you're right, it does need more study.
And it's not the carriers paying it. It is the people that pay the premiums. We keep saying the carriers are paying it. It's the people paying the premium. So certain people are paying it, not carriers.
I understand that.
Madam,
I'm going to ask Michelle Eberly, because I think, did you want to respond specifically to the value of the program?
Yes, I just want to remind the committee that the exchange did do a JCR report, and we have done presentations on the fact that we're collecting the data from the carriers through the carrier accountability report for reinsurance. So we have provided some of that information. We certainly have all of that data that we can provide. And second, we do know, in fact, from the way our waiver program, that the uncompensated care for hospitals has been significantly reduced as a result of this program and getting more folks health insurance coverage. So those are just two examples, but clearly we do have data and we're continuing to work on those through the carrier accountability reports.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Okay, now I'm going to go to Matthew Celentano and then Allison Taylor.
Madam Chair, I'll let Allison go first if you don't mind.
Oh, that's very polite of you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Chair. I did also want to respond to the question that you asked Care First about patient outcomes and managing patient care. At Kaiser, we have a completely managed care model, and we spend a lot of time looking at how members are doing in each specific line of business. So not just the population overall, but, with the individual market and the pandemic, we have seen people churn in and out of Medicaid and the exchange. The individual market members are some of the, that market share has some of the most unhealthy members. And so I think it's really important that we focus on that group. And if there's not desire this year to study the outcomes of members in that market, I think it's really, really important. I wish we could do it this year. But I think we do need to understand the efforts that the carriers are putting in to make sure this money is being spent efficiently.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just add that there is no doubt that this program has 100% lowered premiums and it has stabilized the market, but we have no idea how it has led to different health outcomes. Mm-hmm. And we think that the approach of this bill to just continue it with no look at how to efficiently spend the money to see if we are getting the most bang for our buck is a mistake. We still have until the end of calendar year 23 before the program expires. We don't even have to send in an application that doesn't have to be fully booked until March of next year. This is, I think, a little fast when we have the ability to take the year and get it right, to find out if we are doing the best things, to make sure that we are getting the best healthcare outcomes, and just to sort of, in essence, lift the sunset for another 5 years without actually drilling down on what this is doing and the other impact to other markets is a mistake.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your perspective. I will say that the study does ask about how these funds are used specifically and how they're affecting either positively or negatively the outcomes of the program. And it also allows for this body, this General Assembly, to make changes as appropriate over the years. Just putting this program in place now for the next 5 years with a study allows us some flexibility and agility with the program and we can make changes as appropriate, and we can gather more data because we'll have more time. So, Matt,
Well, Madam
wanna
Chair, I
respond?
thank you very much. And like, as much as I do appreciate the tax credit approach of the dental and vision plans, which we're just going to have to agree to disagree because all the national people tell us that this is not the instance in the uniform tax, but I'm going to let that go. But I do want to speak to the fact that we still have a lot of money that is existing in this program that we can use over the next couple of years. I want to just say that it is disappointing that we did not include the Delaware approach in this bill that would let the commissioner cut off the tax when they had reached fully funded assessment or the amount of money they need to fully fund the program, and then not with the General Assembly by reg to be able to turn back that funding source on if needed appropriate funds. In essence, what this is doing is continuing to build up amount of money that's going to be a slush fund in the future, which is concerning. I think that it is upsetting considering the exchange and the MIA's numbers and their projections over the past 4 years have been wrong every single time. And to have the Delaware approach where we have the ability to manage the assessment so it doesn't have impact on other markets, we thought was pretty wise. One example of this is that, a month or two ago, we were told that the surplus for the reinsurance program at the end of the 23 calendar year would be in the neighborhood of $320 million. About 10 days ago at the exchange board meeting, they said the projected surplus could be $550 million now. So we just think this is sort of putting the cart before the horse without some controls to make sure that the program is fully funded to continue the great work it's done, but with some control on it to make sure that small businesses are not the ones that suffer. Once again, this is taxing health insurance to tax health insurance. That is the problem here. This is our fundamental issue with the bill, is that small group market is paying for the individual market. And we'd like to see a more thoughtful approach fiscally. And that is going to be I don't think we're ever going to be able to get behind the assessment in this bill.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Brad Bobin. Brad, I know you did a number of scenarios, a lot of work on the numbers. You looked at the utilization. Can you speak a little bit to the concern about, there's enough money in the fund that, we should be looking at alternative ways of funding it?
Yeah, I mean, in general, there is still a wide range of projections. And to the point of past projections being wrong, these projections are fundamentally a largely uncertain exercise. And this is the nature of making these types of projections. And, we have a wide range of scenarios, and a lot of our scenarios show that the 1% is not going to be adequate. And we are going to run out of money. We're not going to be able to fund the program for another 5 years. So, as far as representing that we have too much money, that's unequivocally false. There are scenarios that are reasonable where we don't run out of money and the 1% is sufficient, and we end up with a balance at the end of the second waiver period. But, at this point, the 1% seems like a reasonable compromise between, not having enough money and being underfunded and having too much money. And at the end of the day, I personally, don't have any problems with having some kind of cutoff for the collection of the assessment, but, it needs to be with the uncertainty inherent in these projections in mind. And we can't just pick an optimistic scenario and say we're going to cut off funding based on hoping the best case happens. We need to pick a scenario that is more realistic or on the conservative side to make sure that we have the adequate funding, because it's a lot better problem to have too much funding than too little funding. And this program is unequivocally successful. Premiums are 32% lower than they would be without this program. And the worst thing that could happen would be an abrupt removal of the program because we run out of money and we have to cease the operation for a year. That would be absolutely disastrous in the individual marketplace. And that is my main priority, making sure this program can continue. You know, enrollment is up almost 25% since 2018, before the program started. We were losing 15% enrollment a year, and we've gained 25% back. And, you know, this program is doing what it was intended to do: stabilize the individual market and give those individual rates a chance to be reasonable and affordable and attract people back into the marketplace. And so, you know, like I said, there's just a wide range of possible scenarios right now. And a lot of them show that the 1%, you know, it isn't even sufficient.
And Brad, I'm going to ask you the question that I asked you in the hearing. Under this law, if we find that, you know, the best case scenario happens and the 1% is more than we need, we can adjust that figure at any point, correct?
Correct. We can always go back to CMS and submit an amendment waiver and change the tax rate. We did it with the first waiver. We originally had a single 2.75% for just 2019. And then the following year, we amended the waiver with CMS and said, we're actually going to be collecting 1% a year for 2010 through or 2020 through 2023. And so, yes, we can certainly adjust this number in the future. And just one more point I want to make is that, you know, the average assessment across this first waiver period was 1.35% because of that 2.75% in year one. So over the 5-year period, you know, the assessment on average was 1.35%. This 1% assessment that is being proposed, therefore, represents a 35% reduction to the amount of assessment being collected. So, you know, we are not, you know, collecting the same amount of money for the second waiver period as we did in the first waiver period. So I just want to make that clear that, you know, keeping the current 1% does reduce the state funding that's going to be collected in the second waiver period. And you know, just because the first waiver period ends out with an excess doesn't mean the second waiver will, because we are reducing the state assessment.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Delegate Morgan, I'm going to go to Delegate Morgan, and then I'll go back to Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is for Brad. What you keep saying, like the fund will run out or could run out of money in the future, but I remember when we originally did this assessment, I think it was the goal was $350 million. Now, if there's over $500 million, what would cause it? What would be the catalyst for it running out of money? Other than us expanding it like we did last year with a trial program, what would be the catalyst for running out of money if newer people, more healthy people are coming into the market?
I mean, the catalyst is the federal pass-throughs. For the first several years of the program, the federal pass-throughs paid for all of the funding. And that's why the state funding has been able to accumulate and increase. But we don't expect that to be the case going forward for a variety of reasons. We expect, you know, federal pass-throughs to pay for probably the majority of the cost, but not all of the cost. And you know, we've modeled out ranges from 50 to 90%. And the issue is that the state assessment is only on the order of about $125 to $130 million a year. The cost of the program is on the order of $450 to $550 million a year. So 1 year of program costs much more than 1 year of state assessment. And yes, we think that the federal government is going to pick up the majority of that. But if they only pay for 60% of it instead of 80% of it, you know, that gets into the situation where our state assessment is not going to be enough to pay for the state portion of it. And so the big uncertainty is with the federal pass-through.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we can make a calculation for what the federal government's going to do. I mean, the federal government put us in this situation to start with. So saying coulda, shoulda, woulda, you know, I don't know. I think we got to go with what the playing field suggests right now. And it looks like, you know, this is taxing healthcare to provide healthcare. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay, now I'm going to go back to Matt Morgan. Matt Gelentano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Contrary to what Mr. Bowman keeps suggesting, we are not trying to stop the program. We do not want the reinsurance program to end. Nobody wants that. It's frustrating that it keeps getting suggested that way. I have said it 1,000 times since these discussions have started. Nobody wants the reinsurance program to end. There's a reason why the premiums have gone down 32%. That's because we have pumped $1 billion into the program, $1 billion of taxpayer dollars. It is not like that the idea of using general fund dollars is completely foreign as well. Half of the program funding comes from the Medicaid program, which is general fund dollars. Taxpayers are already paying for this program. This portion of it in the commercial carrier side is just taxing other market segments to pay for the individual market. That is not the way to bring down premiums for the rest of the state that we can have a touch upon. It is also disingenuous to say that the program is going to run out of money or to suggest that the 1.3% is a compromise. The original bill was 2.75%. We came in the next year with a separate bill. We also raised too much money in the first year that we needed for the program. The 1% was a reflection on how we needed to lower the premium to meet the needs of the program. It still raised too much money, and the evidence of that is that we have transferred hundreds of millions of dollars out of the reinsurance fund in the last couple of years. If we are going to have a real thoughtful discussion about what is the right way to size fit this program, we should pass the study and come back next year with the benefit of that study to figure out the best approach. The Delaware approach just gives us the ability to stop the assessment if it goes over. It can't go below, it can't lower it. And for Mr. Bowman to suggest that they can just go in and change the 1332 waiver, they cannot. They would have to come back to the General Assembly and change the percentage in statute. So it's a little heavier lift, and that's why we suggested the Delaware approach that would give flexibility to the commissioner to right-size the program.
Thank you. Allison Taylor. I'm mute.
I have a question for Brad. To your point about us getting less federal money going forward, my understanding is that one of the reasons for that is that the market is more competitive now, that there are 3 carriers in it. And so in a number of counties, there's a less expensive option as the second lowest cost silver that serves as the benchmark plan for how much money we get. So would you say that because the market is more competitive, that's why, and prices are lower, that's why we're getting less federal money?
Yes, that's part of the reason. Just to be clear, it was an artificial. APTCs were artificially increased because of the lack of competition, and it wasn't just a matter of one carrier. It was a matter of one carrier with only 2 options: a low cost, average cost Blue Choice plan, and a very expensive Blue Preferred plan. And these elevated APTCs did not exist from 2014 through 2016 when CareFirst offered multiple Blue Choice Silver plans. But yes, from 2018 through 2020, APTCs were inflated because of the fact that Blue Preferred was the second lowest cost silver plan, even though it was also the most expensive silver plan. And that is no longer the case because United is operating the whole state. And so, yes, that is one driver of the lower pass-through amounts. A secondary driver would be the ending of the American Rescue Plan subsidies. That right now pass-throughs are being inflated because there are more subsidies out there available, and we generate pass-throughs by saving the federal government money on their pass-throughs. So because of the expansion under ARPA, we are getting more pass-throughs right now. And right now that is scheduled to end at the end of 2022. And so those are the 2 big reasons why, even though we were 100% funded in 2019, 2020, and probably 2021, we still don't know that for sure. We're not expecting to be 100% funded in the future. And as a frame of reference, but before ARPA in 2021, at the beginning of the year, CMS gave us a pass-through amount that would have funded 78% of the program. And so when, our modeling is showing anywhere from 50 to 90%, but we had that number from CMS. Had ARPA not happened for 2021, we would only had 78% funded, and we would have been paying for 22% as the state. And so, ARPA was a big factor that changed, and that is a data point that we have for certain that pre-ARPA, they had announced our pass-through amount.
Okay. I am hearing this conversation. I think we need some more conversation about this bill. Not ready to vote on it given our discussion, but I'm going to take Delegate Jocelyn Penuel now, and we're going to have to end this subcommittee meeting because our HGO is meeting at 1:30 and we need to give folks a little bit of time. So Delegate Penuel.
Thank you, Chairman Collison. You know, I'm listening to, Matt Celentano and the others. We understand, that you have to pay for this, and you're arguing against basically not passing it for 5 years and studying it. But the truth of the matter is that this is where we need you. We do things to help you and others. And the fact is that the whole program is for market stabilization, and we need to keep doing that. Before that, we were in a lot of trouble. This gives us consistency. It stabilizes us so that we can work on other ways to reduce the health disparity, to have access. I wanted to ask a quick question because this came up of
Sure,
Brad.
sure.
How does this 1% impact the small group market? Does it impact the small group market?
Brad?
Yeah, I mean, the 1% is in small group rates. It has been in small group rates for the last several years. In general, the small group market has been a pretty steady market. It saw some enrollment decline last year, but I think it's much more arguable that was due to the COVID pandemic and the financial realities a lot of small groups experienced than anything related to a 1% assessment being embedded in the rates. And I just want to remind everybody that, small groups and large groups and MCOs all pay this assessment. The small group portion is, not a disproportionate portion. And this 1% is spread over a lot more than just small group. And so, but I would say that in my opinion, none of the marketplaces show evidence that this 1% is causing financial hardship, is causing enrollment to drop in these other market segments. That large group and small group enrollment have both been steady. MCO enrollment has been skyrocketing through the roof, once again related to the COVID pandemic. And I don't see the negative impacts in the other markets when I'm doing my review of those marketplaces, but I do see the positive impact very clear in the individual market. And I think at the end of the day, the 1% addition to the rates in those other markets is well worth the 32% reduction in the individual market. That it is a reasonable balance, and that the individual market is the marketplace that needs this support.
Okay. Delegate Krebs, is your comment a quick one?
Yeah, so you keep saying it affects a small group of the market. It's the 17% of the commercially insured market that we cover in Maryland, and Medicaid. And Medicaid we pay for with the state anyway. I think our biggest argument is there's nothing in the data that we've been given that shows what we originally passed this bill for how many years ago. It was about to get more people into the market, to have them insured, to improve health outcomes. We've not seen anything on it. You keep talking about insurance, and numbers of bodies and costs. And to us in this committee, it's always been about what are we getting the bang for our buck? And if we're going to continue to do this program, my argument is we haven't looked at the outcomes. And number two, why do we make one group of 17% of insurees pay for something else? And why not, when we have this huge budget surplus, if we think this is the way to go, we're already paying for 50% of it through Medicaid. Medicaid is already 50% of what's happening. Why not take the rest of it and have it at least paid for in a different manner than continuing? I mean, I can tell you the people in the small group market for us and the fully insured market that we control, they're screaming and crying because their deductibles are $5,000 and $6,000. These are small businesses. These are individuals.
Delegate Krebs, you've made that point. You've made that point. You're right. And you've made it several times today. So thank you. So again, I'm going to say we will continue this discussion. I'll be meeting with some folks, see if we can't talk a little bit more about it before the next time this committee meets. I want to apologize to everyone who attended this meeting, hoping to have their bill addressed. And we will, please watch the schedule and we'll see when we can reschedule a second meeting this week. Thank you all for being here. And with that, we're going to adjourn this meeting, and the HGO hearing begins at 1:30 today. Thank you.